Okay, I think we're live. All right. Hello and welcome back to what is our Survivor Samoa look back on. We're doing this on a Google Hangout, but also will be audio for the podcast. On the line, super excited. Got AK, Catherine, and Terry. How you guys going?
Good,
yeah,
Ryan.
Great, thanks.
I'm good.
And I'm going to fill in for Adam Ritter tonight as well. Team Shambo.
That's Adam's hot take. You can find it on Twitter at Adam Ritter. I'm pretty sure he just tweeted about his love of Shambo.
Second chances, I'm pretty sure he said, yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is what he wants. We have watched most of or all of Samoa over the last month and a bit, and it's one of those seasons where we talked about it in the last episode. I listened back to it before, and we said it is almost like an advert for Survivor heroes versus villain. Do you guys think that stands up? Terry, I know we spoke about this a little bit before, but do you feel like that stands up, that it is an advert?
I think it definitely bears that out. Like, coming towards the end of this season and seeing the way it goes and where Russell's essentially snubbed for the victory because of a bitter jury, it doesn't really give us the resolution that we want in such a dramatic series. Like, the series, while it wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, but it was a very dramatic series. And we didn't really get the resolution to that. So I'm fully on board with the idea that Samoa was an advert for heroes v villains. Absolutely.
That's super interesting. You've already gone into the hot take category, Catherine. Terry just said that this was a season that Russell was almost robbed, that he shouldn't have won. Do you have that same belief, or?
Well, I've always said, and I have this clear memory of when Russell lost, I fell on the floor laughing. It was hilarious. Like, oh my God, I just laughed my ass off. It was just an absolute comeuppance. I know strategically he was very strong as we see in the edit, but yeah, I laughed my ass off. It was hilarious that he lost. Just loved it.
Okay, I know you're on the other side. What's your feelings about that end game?
Yeah, I think other than maybe 2 or 3 scenes we saw with Natalie having conversations, maybe with Laura when she came over, having conversations with Brett about Faith, and maybe instigating that Eric blind side, I really saw for the most part Russell sort of played the better game. And probably if we're looking at a strategic and not social, but if we're looking at like a standpoint of, if you were a jury member without any feelings and you just saw this game, who would you vote for? I feel like Russell is obvious. I believe the obvious winner in that 3.
It's so interesting. Like, I, having now watched it again, and I feel like I had this similar belief before. I don't put Natalie's win down as a bad win. And I think people really underestimate her win. I don't think she's a bottom 2, bottom 3 winner where a lot of people put her. I do think she made some big moves. I even look at, I think you just mentioned then, AK, about that move when they merge, and she's the one who has that conversation with Laura inside the hut to convince them, well, not to convince them, but to raise the possibility. You know, Eric is raising your name. Like, we should possibly try and change this up a little bit. She does make some moves in the game, but Russell played a really strong game from start to end. I do feel like people have almost this vision of what he did in Heroes versus Villains, and then they place that onto what he did in Samoa, because you look at his social game in there, I don't think it's as bad as people maybe necessarily believe. I just feel like there is some bitterness towards someone who outplayed this majority 8 and was able to get his core 3 to the final. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I'm not going to deny that. Yeah, sorry. That he's really strong strategically, and watching the game, yeah, he's very, very strong. But I think you're discounting, and the edit does discount what the others brought to the table.
Agree.
Right before the merge, the 4 of them in the shelter talking about, right, this is what we need to do. We need to basically divide and conquer. We all need to go and talk to people. They knew they had to go and find the cracks, and they'd be there. So Russell progressed because Mick and Jason and Natalie all went and talked and formed bonds and did all that work. So it's not just off Russell's bat. He's pretty nasty, though. Can I just say that?
Yeah, go.
Like some of his comments were really uncomfortable. Like I wrote down one like calling Monica his little bitch.
Yeah.
And just other things that were just really, really nasty. And I'm not going to talk up Natalie as a great winner, because in the same breath I can laugh at Russell not winning, I can acknowledge that Natalie, in terms of winner, is not up there for me personally. But his social game and just not his aggressiveness, but the way he treats people on the way was just pretty bad, pretty yuck to watch. And that's why he lost it, because it'd be great to have an emotionless jury, but it's a human social experiment. That's what the game is, and we're humans, and that's how they felt.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a fair point as well. And we look at it in terms of the way that like Natalie and Russell had their conversations, the way that he talked to her. Like I was watching the episode where I think it was episode 11, where they talk about the first 27 days, which I love, and I wish they would do for Australian Survivor as well, because it's great to have that catch-up episode to really find out and see some behind-the-scenes stuff. And there's a scene there where Russell is talking to Natalie on the log, and he's effectively saying, like, I don't want you to start using your brain and start thinking about, oh, you might get the $1 million and have to take me out to win the $1 million. And it's just that was a little bit grating, that he really did disregard how she, I think, saw him, because we see confessionals with Natalie throughout the game where she's effectively saying, I know that Russell sees me as the dumb blonde, and I'm going to use him as effectively, we shouldn't use the term, but effectively as a shield to progress further in her own game. And I think it was a pretty effective strategy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Catherine, go.
Absolutely. I'm not saying she really knew what she was doing.
No.
But she played the game she could, and yeah, he just, I think, underestimated everyone else around him.
Okay, what's your take on the whole thing?
On the whole thing.
Well, what is your take on? let me rephrase that. What is your take on what we've been talking about, like how I guess Russell approached people and the way that his language was? Do you feel like his social game just wasn't up to snuff, or do you feel like he had a decent enough social game? Because I feel like Catherine and I maybe are a bit at differences, because I don't feel like you can not have a social game and get to the point he did, because he needed to have Jason, he needed to have Shambo, bring her over, he needed to have John Fincher like convince him that you could be a person and make that decision when they could have gone to rocks for him to flip over and go with the 4-4-4. So I feel like there are these social elements to what he is doing.
Definitely, and he did have a social game, but he had a social game with the 4-4.
Yeah.
You could see they all went to him. They trusted him, and for people like Shambo to say, I trust Russell the most out of anyone, explicitly or something, the fact that, John was willing to do what he had, talked about and whatnot. I don't think if you didn't have a social relationship, you could do that stuff. And I feel like I saw so many flaws in Russell's game watching it back. Like so many, just when the way he would speak to people that like brought up his name and whatnot was terrible. But he was able to get them out next, which he did. But so it didn't affect him. But what happened is I feel like there was the Kellys, the Lauras, the Monicas that he was threatened by that were not getting voted out, just getting voted out next. They were getting voted out next and being sat on the jury.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing, especially when you get to that point and you're going into the merge where it is Galoo heavy. These aren't people who are necessarily going to be people that wanting to necessarily vote for you if you're the main reason for voting them out. Where I feel like Natalie, I think, didn't have that, where she made relationships with people, especially the girls out there, and she just didn't grate people the way he did. Great. This is why we This is great. Okay. So I do want to talk about some of the purple people out there. And I know, like, okay, we've spoken about this where we had Brett who comes to life, but he doesn't come to life until Dave Ball is effectively voted out. But then we see him like go on this immunity run where he's then shown heavily. So, like, what do you think about Brett's endgame?
Yeah, I also have notes, and I wrote on episode 13, "Welcome to Survivor, Brett." I think he got a confessional in the first 3 minutes, and then it was actually an episode where there was 2 tribal councils, and he didn't talk again until the very next episode. I went, "Nah, only kidding." Episode 14, and then we get to see the emergence of Brett and his challenge wins. But I knew that these challenge wins were coming, so I kept a close eye on Brett in every other challenge. And it was very obvious early on in the game that he was the one chosen to sit out lots. And then when it came to individual stuff, once we had merged, he was actually like quite useless, which makes a lot of sense as to why he was always disregarded when they were going through the glue of who was to be next.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like he was just so quiet and not really threatening at all. Is that they just let him get too far into the game. And he was someone who showed himself to be quite a big physical threat. And I think they just underestimated how well he could go. And it really made them make the decision where they had to now start cutting into their own people.
Of Foa cutting in? Or?
Well, even not even in terms of that, but they had to make a decision about Shambo. Like, are we going to take out Shambo now, or is it going to be Jason? And there was those hard decisions that had to be made.
I mean, the beauty of it with Shambo in the equation is that regardless of what Russell has in plans, you've always got Jason, Natalie, and oh my god, mental blank,
Mick
and Mick, all with the assumption of she's number 5, so that when it gets to a stage of if he wins the immunity challenge, it's always going to be Shambo, which Russell can swing any way he wants to, but for the most part, he had a really good. It was a really good way of always keeping that second option open, being Shambo.
Terry, is there anyone who stood out to you that we haven't talked about that you were like, that person stood out more on a rewatch?
I'd even say that Natalie was most certainly robbed of the edit that she deserved, like especially for a show, like for a season winner.
For a winner,
yeah, like for a winner, she got really nothing. Like she was always portrayed as Russell's sidekick and always dragged on the coattails. So when she ended up winning this season, her social game didn't really get the sort of credit that it deserved. And a lot of when I remember watching it way back when I was young, and like 9 years ago, I imagine. Like watching it back then, you just don't see the edit of a winner. Like everyone, like there are winners edits that are deserved, and there are winners edits that aren't deserved. And in the case of Russell, I suppose there is the sense that he was always like, it was almost like the Endemol wanted to put like a twist on it. I'm not sure where to place that one, but like Natalie didn't get the edit she deserved, in my opinion. Like for the social game that she played, and to come out winning it at the end of the day, definitely not.
This makes me think that maybe she didn't have the social game that we're all giving credit for. We saw snippets of it, but if she's a winner and she's doing things around camp to demonstrate the reason why she won, I believe they would have shown it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I suppose if they had more content,
that isn't that a social game like that? She came in with a rat AK. What does that show?
She came in with a rat.
When she walks back into camp.
Okay.
You killed a rat.
Yeah, exactly. That's the winner's edit right there. The rat.
Exactly. You actually killed that rat. You're like, oh, she's winning.
Symbolism right there.
I want to talk a little bit about someone who actually came back and played again, which I always find very fascinating, is Monica Padilla. I wasn't a huge fan of Monica leading into the past season where she came back in second chances. I wasn't really sure even why she was on the ballot. Do you guys have any about Monica's first game and what you saw? I'll come to you, Catherine, maybe. Like, what do you think about Monica's game?
Yeah, I didn't really see anything that I went, oh, yeah, I wish she'd gone better the second time around, or that's why she was on the second chance ballot.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't see anything. Surely there's other female contestants that they could have put on that ballot, or is it to put a blunt soundbite to it? Is it because she looked really good in a bikini?
Possibly. I don't know. Like, she has that scene towards the end, and it's the double episode that she goes in, and she has I feel like she has a good 10 to 15 minutes in that episode. But that's like it that we see for the whole season, where she starts to throw shade at Russell and really like spin his tires. But that's all we see. And I feel like we didn't really see enough. Where, like, on the other hand, someone who I feel like I would love to see play again, but I don't think she ever will, is Shambo, who I talked about in the very first episode as someone who I loved as a character. As a player, she's horrible. Even after the Monica vote, she's talking about, oh, now we can play an individual game. Like, it's clearly not an individual game. It is tribe versus tribe. She doesn't get it. But Russell has played her so well throughout. You know, he's sharing the idol with her. She's at one scene, she's got the idol when she's pretending it's going to be like a little axe knocking off Monica's head. So, Laura's head. So, like, there are fun little scenes like that from her. But I don't know, where does Shambo stand with you, AK, after watching this? And I know I spoke highly about her in the first episode, but do you think that it is warranted? Do you feel like she's someone who did stand out as a character in this season?
As a character, Shambo stood out. I think she probably would have been a side of Russell and maybe Jason, probably the next heaviest edited character. And as I mentioned previously, you don't get that unless, you know, you are somebody out there. So as from a character standpoint, I loved Shambo. I thought she was fantastic. She brings something that you don't see every season on Survivor. It's a real niche. And even the fact that she just owns it. She owned that mullet of hers since 1986. Like, I think she's a fantastic character for the show. And yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about Shambo. I think she played the best way she knew how, and she was self-delusional at times and whatnot. But it's great TV. And in regards to Monica, I don't know anything she did that gave her she didn't deserve to get another shot on Survivor, personally. I thought she sat around, tried to be beautiful while she had the numbers, and then even when the numbers went against her, she didn't do anything until she knew it was going to be her. And what she did, as you saw, nothing played out from it. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of Monica.
No, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Terry, do you have any opinions on Shambo at all? Like, where do you fall? I remember in the first episode you were someone who liked Shambo as well.
Well, yeah, she's been an amazing character to watch over this season, and even though she's probably not the most competent player, she still came sixth. Like, she's got to be doing something right, even if it is just riding on the coattails of Russell. Like, she's using her social position as an outcast on Galoo and bonding with the people on Falfala. She's building connections across tribes. That's a game-winning strategy right there, and it got her to sixth place. So I'm all for Shambo. Like, unfortunately, she's never coming back because she's confirmed several times that she's not. But like, let the Shambo love train begin. Like, I love this girl. I want her back.
Let's give her credit. She made Galoo feel like she was with them at a certain vote. And then at the very next one, she had the game awareness that it was time to jump. I know you can, I guess, determine that to be the fact that, you know, she felt isolated from day one on 90210 Tribe, but she still had the awareness of when was the right time to do it, and still made Galoo at the right time feel like she was involved with them. So I think she needs a little bit more credit, but she's not a great player.
I think it's probably better to say that she was a person who was lucky. I think James just died into the dark.
You saw it here live.
Saw here live and in replay. But I do want to talk about Shambo a little bit because if she had have gone to a tribal council early, I do feel like she probably would have been the obvious first one out from her tribe, Catherine. And really, it was the Galoo tribe winning and Foa continually losing, and then getting to a point where they had the merge that really allowed her to just to float to the merge and avoid those tribal councils. Do you agree with that, Catherine?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is an absolute lesson in you go to the merge with strong numbers rather than superior numbers.
Yep.
That, you know, they went, the Foa went in with 4 strong, way better than the Galoo with, you know, all the numbers that were there and weak alliances and hadn't been tested by tribal. It really goes to show you don't want to wing everything. And yes, Shambo would have gone. Absolutely.
And I think it's super interesting because it's at the point where Russell Swan is not eliminated. Well, he's left because of a medical evacuation, which was, you know, it's got to be up there in terms of the medivacs, just the way and the pressure. Like we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Like his medical evacuation in this season is one of the scariest I think we've seen throughout, because genuinely, like, it looked like he had a heart attack.
Yeah, only Caleb on
I've
forgotten the name already. Oh,
Wrong.
That only that one was scarier.
Yeah. And I guess now we've got helicopters that can just come in and it adds to the effect, but it was crazy the way that that played out. And that note as well, I think that tribal council was meant to be a double elimination that night as well, and they ended up changing that up and not doing that because of Russell's elimination. So again,
that was the night they both went to tribal council.
Yeah.
And obviously they got sent back with no one being voted out.
Yeah.
I thought the 2 things that stuck out to me then is Monica was going.
Yep.
She was gone. And the second thing was I would love to see that done in Australian Survivor. But we'll get onto that a bit later.
Okay, well, we'll get onto that. But what I love that comes out of this is it's almost that we have to pick a new leader. And I love this from the guys, and it's led by Eric, who I think is he's someone who I liked in terms of his strategy in this season. His social game wasn't the greatest, but in terms of the strategy, he has a conversation with the 4 guys, and they acknowledge that the split is pretty even between guys and girls, and that they're worried about the numbers, and they think, how can we flip this over? So they target Shambo as the person they know just has this innate want to be a leader. It's who she is as a person. And they come up with this plan that, we're just going to elect Shambo as a leader. And they devise this plan where they're all going to vote for her, but it's going to be really quick. They do it in the shelter. It's just like, raise your hand. Who do you want to be the leader? Pick a number. And all of a sudden the girls are blindsided. They're like, oh, how is Shambo the leader? They don't even know how it happened, Terry.
Well, yeah. And for like looking, even I don't, like, when looking at that, even when you have access to what the guys are thinking, even I still don't know how that happened. Like, giving Shambo the access to do something like that, like to send people over to tribal council to be able to make those decisions, is it the right play? Like, yes, it's pinning a target on her back, but I still look back at that vote, and I don't think it's the right play. Like, it's turning the girls against Shambo, so they still maintain the control of the tribe. But at the end of the day, Shambo wasn't with any of them. And like, I suppose we have the benefit of hindsight by having all the angles and having both tribes confessionals. But at the end of the day, Shambo wasn't with them at all. So I'm not sure what they were trying to achieve there.
It's interesting you take that take, because I felt like the opposite. I love the move because I almost felt like it put the wedge between the boys and the girls, and it said, you know what, Shambo, we support you. We want to see you as our leader. And she's someone who is she's not overly game savvy, but she is person savvy, and she wants to have relationships with people. And if you've got the guys who are saying to her, like, we want you to be our leader, I think she's going to say, well, I'm not going to vote that person out, because they're saying, I want to follow you. And it kind of creates that divide stronger with Laura, who she has that distrust with. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. And you're right. Hindsight is always 2020, and we can look in the future and see how it played out. And I do think it was the correct move by the guys at the time, but you never really know. So But I like the move from the guys. AK, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I had it down as one of the better moves of the season. I thought it was actually genius on Eric's behalf. I loved the fact that he had the awareness to know that Shambo was the one on the outs, that if there is a merge or a swap or whatnot, that he needs to have her on side. And I love the fact that he could see how close Laura, Monica, and Kelly were getting, that would, jam that wedge in between, whilst still not enough for those three girls to go against the boys. So, I loved the move at the time. Looking back at it, I still love it. Yeah.
I think like we talk about maybe the instigator of that move is Eric, and it's interesting because he is the first person to go. They do merge. It's 8-4. It just seems like it's got to be a pretty obvious that Foa is just going to be kicked off one by one, starting off with Russell. Russell comes into the merge and he's really hot. He's showing Laura his idol. He can't trust Laura anymore, so he wants to get rid of her. And I feel like this is the one like weakness in Russell's game, is that it is those conversations that are happening with the other members of his Foa tribe that are kind of linking in with the other people, and we see Natalie have that conversation in the shelter, which puts the tiger on Eric. But what does Eric do wrong at this point? And AK, you've played the game, so I'll come back to you. Like, what does Eric do wrong at this point, where he has a majority? What does he do wrong to then go from having an 8-4 majority to then being the person who is voted off by his tribe, when it's clear the guys don't necessarily want to vote him out?
Yeah, I think the issue right now is, Russell, he showed his cards to Laura and Monica, I believe. And I think the fault in his game in this season is that does he not realize that people talk? So like, everyone would have known he's like the savage player over there trying to make things happen. And we already know that Shambo's feeling on the outs, which would make it a 7-5. I just don't see how anyone from Galoo could see it feasible to vote off a Galoo at that point in time. If they're weak, step on their throat and make them weaker, and then use a few numbers within your little majority within that Galoo. I don't know. I can't remember, to be completely honest, what it was that with Eric's downfall, other than the fact he was maybe just trying to, take charge too much.
I think he raises the name to the 4-4-3, excluding Russell, and they're sitting on the bench, and he's very dictatorial. He's just saying, this is how it's going to be. You're going to vote this way. If you don't, there's a chance you might not be here tomorrow. Like, this is the game where it's at. You need to do what I'm kind of saying.
Yeah, and that's when you feel like you're so comfortable in the game that I wouldn't say it's who you are as a person, but, there are times in sport where, people get cocky and arrogant and whatnot because they're up by so much and whatnot. And it's not necessarily who they are. They just get carried away with things. And I feel like you saw it with Russell, and I feel like this is probably, the downfall of Eric.
And it's an interesting one as well, because he must have had confidence. I believe he was raising Monica's name at the time as well. And I guess that links into that pass potential vote, which they didn't end up going to, where she was going to go. And he's confident enough that he has an idol in his pocket and he doesn't play it. And, you've played an idol, AK, so I'll stay with you for this. Like, what do you think? Like, do you feel like he should have been confident enough that he shouldn't play the idol at this stage? Like, me personally, I feel like if I'm Eric, I probably don't play the idol as well. But that's just my own position, because I think that he probably sees himself in a comfortable enough position. But what do you think and take from that?
Yeah, I think you've got to have some form of awareness every time you go into tribal council to know that, how could this be me? But I feel like what it might have been for him is that there was too many other names being thrown about for there to be any form of reason why it would be him. And in his head, I feel like, he had the boys on lock from his tribe. The girls probably weren't savvy enough to pull a move like that at this point in time in regards to Monica, Laura, and Kelly. So I feel like, if I was him, I honestly probably would have gone home with an idol in my pocket.
Adam, hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for having me, guys.
Terry
the rest of Samoa.
Terry just read one of your tweets saying that you endorsed Shambo for a return each season. So thank you for your input.
Is this a hack? I don't believe this. I don't believe that I would have said this. I think if you look at my tweets about Samoa, they've been pretty consistent in that I dislike Shambo. But anyway, we won't rehash that.
Yeah, you were the point there. Catherine, I haven't come to you for a little bit. Eric himself, do you have anything to add on, Eric?
Yeah, I saw him as a good player, but I didn't see a lot there because obviously other players sucked up the airtime. But can I just say, Danger Dave Ball, he was the best. I want to see more of Danger Dave. But I did like how Eric positioned Shambo as the leader so that he could control Shambo.
Keep going.
And control the leader.
Catherine,
that was what I liked.
Keep talking about Dave. Why did Danger Dave stand out to you? Because I'm someone who was a big Danger Dave fan as well, and I rewatched this season, and I think my stock lowered on him. I don't know why. I like some of his confessionals. I think he's interesting and quirky and different, but his game savviness was what surprised me. That I just remembered him as being more aware of what was going on, and it really came across like he just was not aware at all. And even I think like the next vote with the Kelly vote, where like I love that he went up to the Foa four afterwards, like, oh, great move, don't tell anyone, great move, I loved it. But like I still like him, but I feel like my stock slightly decreased on him. But tell me why you love him.
I think the quirkiness, I think that just completely sold me. Plus, Jeff always calling him Dave Ball. I don't know why, but I love that.
I know why. I think it's something that I think if you've got a really short first name and a short last name, like Dave Ball and I have the same number of letters in our names. And I find that a lot of people just refer to you in your full name just randomly for some reason. So I think that might have been the case with Dave Ball.
He only has it's only I guess it's 2 syllables. Yours is 4. You've got
well, he's got eight letters. So I mean,
it's quicker.
Yes, it is even quicker than Adam Ritter.
Mr. Adam Ritter.
Yes. And come on, when he was steering the pirate ship, his little ha 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 ha. I can't. Sorry, not a visual medium apart from you guys, but I liked his quirkiness. I thought he didn't. He's the type of person I think who learns quickly in the game. He might not have been the most game savvy, but I think if you put him out there again, he would actually be better and be better each time, better each week. He would have been better with more tribal councils, I think.
Okay, I know we watched a couple of episodes together, and it was around around where Dave was about to go. And I know, I don't want to say, but you tell me your feelings about Dave.
I love Dave as a character. I think he's fantastic. He's goofy. He's everything I love on TV. But his game awareness was just shocking, and I can't believe he would just, when they had the numbers to split, and he's like, they don't have an idol, and then an idol gets played, and just at tribal councils when things would happen, he would just look so shocked. I'm like, I love this from a character point of view. I just hate it as a game player point of view, and just I can't remember what scene it was, but he made this play, and it was just like, this is so dumb. This is like the dumbest thing. Why are you doing this?
Oh, he was talking. I'm sure he was talking about. I'm pretty sure it was after the scene where he was with Laura and they went to John Finch and they're talking about the numbers and they couldn't calculate which number should go where. And then he said someone like, "Let's vote John Fincher" or something like that. And John is like, "Why is my name being raised? Like, I don't want to be on the block. Like, it makes no sense." And especially for John, who strategically, John went up in my estimation in terms of a strategic player, in terms of a character. I know Adam loves some Fincher, but
loves is a strong word. We're talking Survivor Samoa, but yes,
back in the day, if you were on Twitter at the time, you would have been Fincher's my bae.
Yes,
all that.
Yes,
yeah. I think he was like, when he got told they're getting told it's you, and he said, well, when was I going to be notified? I would have liked to been told this. That was all Dave Ball's doing. It was just it was terrible.
Well, that's the thing. At least include the person that you're raising their name, because the worst thing is you can be out there and say, "Hey, my name is being raised." Like, well, why is that being raised? At least go and like talk about it as a group and say, "All right, we're going to raise so and so's name, but we're not doing it. We're doing this." At least have that conversation.
It happened so many times in my season. Jared would be like, "Now I'm going to go over there and throw shade over you," and I'll be like, "Sweet." But if he didn't tell me that, and then someone come up to me and told me, Jared's saying this about you, I would have the same reaction as John had.
I think this all almost like comes to a head, and where I guess it's good chronologically, because we're at that Kelly elimination, and it's one where Russell has to play the idol, and he does play the idol. He plays it correctly. They all vote for him. We see that conversation where Russell's walking past, and he doesn't know whether he should play it on Natalie or play it on himself because he heard Natalie's name. And I should add as well, this is after the Eric vote where he does play an idol just out of fear. He really is out of the loop. He plays it and he has to find a new idol, and he finds this one under the bridge, which he then shares with Shambo. But he does play the idol correctly at this stage. I'll come to you, Terry. What do you think about their decision to go with Kelly at this point? And I think Laura had immunity at this one. I think that was the one after they had the, what was it? The like T-ball challenge, I believe she won, or was that the one?
I think it was. I've got it here. The grappling hook with the wooden peg in each bag.
Yeah. Oh, and the puzzle, and she absolutely dominated that puzzle. Everyone else is way behind. It was the three of them, and she just like bang, 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 bang. And I think Nick was on that challenge as well.
Yeah. Oh, like I think the Kelly vote, like the Kelly blindside, I think was a complete plan B. Like if Laura hadn't won that, she would have been gone, to be honest. Like there's no real other way of looking at that. Like Russell saw her as a threat, like, and realistically she was a social threat at the time. It sort of tapered off towards the end of the season, but at that time Laura was their initial target. So when she won immunity, it just fell through and plan B just stuck in, and that's what I see it as.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I guess the 50-50 call in that stage is it going to be Monica or is it going to be Kelly? And Kelly is someone who, like, absolutely beautiful, but we saw nothing from her. She had really nothing at all in the season, Catherine. I feel like I don't even know who she is.
No, that's literally my notes for the merge episode. I wrote, "There's a Kelly." I hadn't realised she was there. She was that much of a non-entity, which is mean. It's mean.
Even in her boot episode, like she doesn't get any airtime. I feel like she has one or two confessionals at most. Like she is invisible. And I know that the narrative is setting it up that it's going to be Laura. That it's going to be Laura at that stage, and they're trying to create that dynamic. But when Laura wins immunity, then it's always going to have to be someone else, and we just missed that. AK.
Does Shambo tell Russell the votes are going on him because she's in on that vote? Because it's a successful idol play, but does the credit need to go to Shambo, Adam Ritter?
You know what? I do remember this, and I do remember giving the credit to Shambo at the time. Like, I was more anti-Russell than I was Shambo. And I must tell you, it did annoy me to see Shambo just flip on her group, because ultimately, does it really serve her to tell Russell that the votes are going on him and protect him? No, because Russell shows no loyalty back to her, as he should, and she goes ultimately. So I think I do give her credit in that respect. One thing I find interesting about Kelly as well is that, in her bio, she's like, with a highly addicting and sociable personality, Kelly is certain she will stand out in the game of Survivor. So it's funny that is not a case of destiny fulfilled at all, and she did not stand out.
Adam, as Shambo reiterates so many times during the last few days of the dying Galoo, is that they ended Galoo. Galoo is dead the moment they vote out Eric. So, and she says she has been 4-4 effectively since they sent her over during the season early in that pre-merge period. So they were her people. They were always the people who connected best with her. So was she really flipping, or was she just going with her people? And did she make that move after they decided to flip on her and the Galoo tribe?
I mean, you could argue semantics one way or the other. The fact is,
that's what we do here, Adam.
Well, I know, yes, that's right. But Shambo did vote for Russell, so she let them in on the plan, and voted for Russell. And you could say that was an instance of a hinky vote, which we've seen repeated in later seasons. But I think I don't know. I think she still kind of wanted to be accepted by that initial tribe. Like, as much as we can laud Shambo for making some moves, I think she still, at her heart, was playing very emotionally, and she, I think, wanted that acceptance from her initial tribe. I might be wrong, but that's kind of what I think.
I think the big one is that we're at this position now where, for all intents and purposes, I think Galoo recognized that they know that Shambo is pretty much with Foa. The numbers were 6-4. It's effectively 5-5 with Shambo flipping over. They've really lost their majority of 8-4. Somehow, it's still amazing how they lost it. And it gets to the point where they go to a tied vote, and we see during the episode that Fincher has to make a decision. What is he going to do? Is he going to stick with his tribe and go to Rocks, or is he going to, I guess, not take that risk and try and, make something happen on the other side? What is your opinion about that move, Catherine? Did you think it was a good move by John, or do you think it was the wrong move?
Watching it, I'm just trying to think. Who had immunity that week? It was Mick.
Mick had immunity. I think it was the one where they had to throw the rocks at the plates that were hanging up, and then they had the bow and arrow thing.
Yeah. So Mick had immunity, and the votes were on Natalie.
Votes were on Natalie and Laura. It was a 5-5 tie, the first vote, and then
yeah. So if you're thinking about it, on the re-vote or picking rocks, I should say, Mick's not picking a rock, Natalie's not picking a rock. It's mostly old Galoo picking rocks. So, probability tells us that the probability of someone in John's alliance going home is higher than someone from the Galoo side of things. So it does make sense in that sense for John to flip. Maths teacher.
It's interesting. I see the likelihood. Yes, it's probably better for him, I guess, mathematically to flip, but game-wise, was it the right decision? Adam, I can see you raising your hand. What do you... Yes, Mr. Adam Ritter at the back.
Yeah, yes. So class is in session. I think, yes, I can probably say 2020 hindsight. I don't think he should have flipped, to be all honest with you. I think take the risk, because ultimately he goes next episode anyway. And I think if he can get any kind of gain on this on this reverse alliance that seems to have formed around him, that he's kind of a sitting duck in, I think if this took place in a season, much later on, like if this was in season 33, I think more people would have taken the punt, because the gameplay's kind of accelerated and become a lot faster over the years, at least on the American side. So I think, I don't know, I think he should have gone to Rocks. But I'm looking at it from the context of now, and I think back in the time, I think most people would argue, don't go to Rocks.
AK, would you go to Rocks?
If I was in his position, I would have gone to Rocks. However, with having Russell approach me, I would have said to him, if you want this show of good faith, I need Mick to give me the individual immunity necklace, and then I will do the swap on the vote. I still wouldn't have, but all I would know from that is that I'm going to Rocks, but I can't be voted out. That's
really interesting, actually. That's a good way to look at it as well. And we've seen, this come out in Survivor over subsequent seasons, and people have to make that hard decision. I think the most famous one is probably John Cochran in South Pacific have to make that decision. Do you stick with the tribe that you know, or do you make that decision to flip over and subsequently just be that added number? And I think that was Finch's problem. He probably, that's a great play by AK, and one I didn't even think of, but it's a great one to do and possibly try and pull off. Would it have happened? Maybe not, but
wouldn't you love to see the scene of him trying that? Like, it would have been brilliant. Yeah, because you'd get you get to see what's working, the cogs turning in his mind of how he's playing this, and then a cool confessional to say, like, I'm not voting out one of my Galoo, but now I'm not going out if we draw Rocks. Like, it would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
I will just say on this play, have we seen anyone do this like Russell did it since? Has anyone been able to convince someone on the revote since Russell? Because I can't think of anyone.
Well, no, from my perspective, AK, I think more often than not, people will just go to rocks. I don't think people have. I think we think of John Cochrane's case, but I can't think of any other case where it's been so close. People end up flipping, but not because someone's really convinced them, because they want to protect themselves. And it's not because of someone else.
And even in that scenario with Cochrane is almost more like the Shambo of that season, where he's the odd one out. He's the person who's in the minority, where like Fincher, he still looks like people are still going to him to talk about the strategic elements of the game. They need him to cast votes and to decide what's going to happen. So I do feel like within that group, he is in a strong position. So maybe he should have taken the risk, but that is Survivor. Like I don't know, Catherine, you're the maths teacher here. The odds aren't in his favor.
No, they're not. They really aren't. And no one had picked Rock since Marquesas season 4. Now it's happened far more often. And in Blood versus Water, Vetus flipped after a tied vote to save himself. That was what happened, wasn't it? With the Brad Culpepper vote off.
Was that my gosh, I'm having a mental blank. Adam, you can help me with this. The guy who passed away, I've now had a mental blank. Caleb, yeah, because he flipped over, didn't he? Because he didn't.
He sort of instigated it because his name was being brought up.
Yep.
So basically, at Tribal, he was like to Sierra, I'm not voting for you. You're not going home. Sort of forced it all there at Tribal.
I think we've talked a little bit about in terms of the players who go subsequent to that. We talked about Dave. We talked about Monica, and pretty much just going bang bang. AK, you want to add to that?
No, I just want to talk about John again.
Yeah,
I just want to talk like next hour about John. He's a beautiful man.
You guys all see, and this is proof anyway, but like this week it came out that Parvati and John are having a baby girl.
They are indeed.
So congratulations.
Congratulations.
And I don't know. I think Parvati kept her last name.
But let me ask you this, just on the John and Parvati relationship, because we look at John's personality on the show, and we see Parvati in her seasons. I think she's kind of clashed with this kind of player. I actually genuinely think that if they ended up on the island together, they might not have ended up in a relationship. I wonder if anyone else shares that view, but
I haven't deeply thought about it, to be honest, Adam. Like,
no.
No, but I put the question to you. If you think, like, if they were on the same season, I feel like there would have been maybe loggerheads a little bit more in some alternate reality.
I suppose it really depends on how they come in. Like if they're on separate tribes, then maybe they don't have that sort of clashing as much. And I suppose if they are on separate tribes, then they clash more in the merge. Like at the end of the day, there's no real way to predict that sort of thing. Like, yeah, the personalities might clash, but at the end of the day, you can't really predict that sort of thing. And I will admit, I have not really thought about that as much either. I've thought about John a lot. Trust me, I've thought about John a lot because he's adorable. But yeah, not about that relationship, no.
No, but congratulations to them regardless.
Yes, definitely.
Did Parvati ever really clash with anyone big time on the island?
Russell.
I'm trying to think. Well, yeah, Russell, but everyone clashes with Russell.
And I think in Micronesia, she was pretty belligerent about getting Eric out.
I think that John would have been her James. I think it would have been that relationship.
Yeah. I think so. That's probably right.
Back to my man John. I just wonder, because in America's season, you obviously get paid more for the closer you finish to the title. I wonder if that goes through his head at all, because honestly, the move that I see him make, for me, there's no chance he's getting to the end by making that move. Where if he draws rocks, hopefully a file forward draws the odd rock and goes, and he's got a better chance of winning this game. But does it play in his mind of, I'm guaranteeing myself another tribal and hopefully by some good favour that, you're going to make some more money along the way? I think of all these things.
But yeah. I'll counteract by saying that John was a rocket scientist at the time, so I don't think he was in the spot that, like, money... Wasn't he? Like, he was pretty well off at the time, so I don't think money was probably at the forefront of his mind. It's true, like other people come with more to like play for and that kind of thing, and I think he was young, and I think at that point where it's like 8th place or 9th place, the increments aren't that different composed to where you get to like 3rd or 4th, and you know we're talking money that's like 5 figures, 6 figures.
And he's an engineer, so he thinks mathematically. So he'll be thinking about the probabilities. Not about whether
then he should have drawn rocks, because like I don't know, that's the way I play. Like if he goes to rocks, he's got more chance of winning the game.
But then does it come to again over analyzing? And I feel like there's this thing where people who are maybe they have a high IQ, but maybe they over analyze every situation too much, and he analyzed it so much to death that he's like, I can't take that risk. He's not someone who is willing to take that risk. He's sort of John Cochran as well, where you look at them, they're incredibly smart people. You probably think mathematically, what's the best decision for my game long term? It might be that, but then the fear of actually having to make that move is what stops them from doing the move. And I think that's the big issue for him.
Yeah, I think you saw it same with like Dave Bull. I think going into the season, Jeff had announced he's got the highest IQ they've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I guess, being intelligent may not pay off in the Survivor sense.
Oh, Russell even talks about it in the game where you have book smarts and you have street smarts, and it's the combination between the two. And I guess that comes to island smarts as well. If you've got that game where you can be island savvy, it doesn't matter if you're book smart or anything else. You need to have that savviness and those connections and relationships with people on there. So, I think it's really interesting. I think the interesting thing is we see, and we spoke about Shambo being that 5th person, but we get to a point where Brett wins immunity and they have to knock off one of their own followers, and the decision is made to take out Jay-San. Was it the right decision for Russell at this point, AK? I know you've just watched it as well today. Like, was it the right decision for them to take out Jay-San, for Russell, I guess, using Russell as the person who's making the decision? Was it right for Russell? Was it right for Mick? Or should have Mick tried to do something with Natalie and said, no, maybe we get out Russell at this point?
Yeah, it's funny because obviously you don't know how things are viewed out there, but watching it, I remember feeling really strongly once Shambo had gone. For me, for some reason, it was so clear that Natalie and Brett were the two favourites from the jury's point of view. I don't know what it was that like made me feel that way, but it was so clear that you already heard from Eric his disregard for Jason's game, calling him, I can't remember what it was, but saying like he's got all the attributes but doesn't bring them. Yeah. You've already heard people refer to like Mick as like a useless leader. I don't know. It struck out to me so vividly that like Natalie really needed to be that next one to go.
So Adam, why wasn't it Natalie?
Why wasn't it Natalie? Because I think she continues to be underestimated, and massive credit to her is that I think a lot of in these dominant seasons where it's all these males at the end together, I think they go after each other, and I think that's what happened here is that they saw Natalie as someone who was young, pretty low-key, under the radar, and they thought, oh, well, she's not going to be able to argue in front of a jury and win. And they really just fundamentally forgot that sometimes the jury just votes for who they like more, and Natalie hadn't rocked the boat that much and was a pretty fundamentally likable person.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree with that as well, and it's interesting to see how it plays out, and especially considering if you want to, I guess Jason hadn't shown much in challenges, and like he looks good on paper as someone who would potentially beat Brett, but he hadn't really shown anything throughout. So I guess it's not worth taking that. Brett does fall at that last challenge. At that last challenge, I believe, is it Mick who wins that last immunity challenge? And
Russell.
Oh, Russell wins. What is that challenge? Oh,
it's
yes,
the one with the pole and the idol on the top.
Sorry, it is the pole and the idol one, and Russell ends up winning it. What do you guys think about Brett's run though? He has, how many wins does he win in a row? 3 in a row?
3 in a row.
What do you think about that run, Adam?
Yeah, I'm someone who grew to really like Brett. And I think it was maybe because I was at a similar spot in my life. Like I was a bit younger than Brett, but I still was like, could look up to him as like a young, cool guy that just, was really starting to find his feet in the game and hopefully go all the way and win. And I was so pro Galoo as opposed to Foa that I really wanted to see a Galoo make it to the end because I thought that would have been guaranteed the win. So for me, it was a really impressive performance to win those immunity challenges, really from nowhere because he hadn't really shown that he had any sort of challenge prowess early on in the season, I thought. So I thought it was really fun, but I think it was a case of too little too late because we didn't really see much in terms of his personality or anything else, but this just rising of a challenge beast towards the end. And I think that's what really endeared myself to him and his character.
I think you didn't even really see his character. You didn't even see his edits, even when he was winning these challenges.
Yeah.
It's just like when I watched it back when it was first aired, I think if I knew what I knew now, I know he's not winning that final challenge.
Exactly right. I think it's like that case of I kept watching every episode, how did this happen? Oh, he won. Oh, well, he can't be voted for. Who else is it? And the edit really did not focus on any decisions that he was making, even though he was kind of making decisions along with everyone else. And I think that if I had read that edit, it would have shown me that, he's not going to win at all.
So we get to this final three and it's Mick, Natalie, and Russell. It's the Foa three that are remaining that have somehow done really the impossible to get from 8-4 minority to the final three. I guess in terms of the cell that they have, coming in, I still feel like I remember watching this at the time and thinking I still felt like Russell had this season. I didn't feel like there was that bitterness. Even when they were reading the votes, I kind of felt like it was still going to be Russell. But I guess I don't know if it's just hindsight rewatching it and seeing it again that maybe Natalie's game stands out a bit more. I'm not sure, but we haven't spoken about Mick at all during this game. He's really forgettable. He's just, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know what it is to me, Catherine, but he's just so normal. He's just like a generally too normal for Survivor type of guy.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. And it's a shame because I think there is someone who maybe not a top tier player, but there's someone who is savvy about the game because I see him talking about, finding cracks and talking to everyone and he knows and he understands the game. So I think it's a shame we didn't see more of Mick. But I have to admit, even back on that first episode, they showed him. I had no memory of Mick, and so it's a shame that we've missed out on learning about all of these people.
Terry, is there any moments from that final tribal council that stood out to you on your rewatch? Is there anything that stands out?
There is one in particular, and it actually involves Mick, funnily enough. It's Shambo gets up and calls Mick's game feckless. And I can just imagine half of America going, huh? It's a brilliant way to describe Mick's gameplay because we don't really see any of it, but it was just a hilarious moment from that tribal. For Shambo's already said on Russell. She says that as soon as she goes through it, but feckless is definitely my word of the season. Definitely.
Adam, tribal council. Talk about Eric, and do you recall Eric's votes and him talking about at tribal council?
It was probably one of the funnest moments of that tribal council because I remember going back on it and I really wasn't pumped to see any of these people win for various reasons. But my horse in the race was Mick, but that was, to me, in my mind, he was the least offensive. And I don't know, I feel like they kind of eviscerated him too much. But Eric was pretty, he was really out there and he was just really fun. And he systematically criticized why Russell did not deserve to win. And in the same breath showed why Natalie deserved to win. And I think everyone tries, there are a lot of players out there who try to emulate what Eric does in a final tribal council speech from now on.
I guess it comes like to that question: is it a bitter jury in the end? Like, was it actually a jury that was bitter and couldn't recognize the game? I guess we talked about the undertones throughout this 8K about where Russell stands. We do see the final vote 7-2. John and Shambo end up voting for Russell when everyone else ends up voting for Natalie. Is there anyone else who he could have got a vote from? Like, I even remember watching, and you watch the reactions of the jury, and you see Eric throughout, especially that early stage. He's fist pumping and so great that Russell is making these moves, and then he goes against that at the end. It's just, I feel like game should respect game, and he didn't quite do that.
Yeah, you saw him like whispering, like so good when like his former tribe mates were getting voted out by Russell's moves, and then for him to go and make this pitch against Russell. I found it quite funny because at the time when I watched it years and years ago, I thought like, oh, he's single-handedly ruined Russell from winning this. But then watching it back, you think everything that he talked about Natalie and, proed her on, you could do the exact same for Mick. Mick was, in my eyes, identical gameplay, just a male. I feel like he was able to steer it around the fact that, Mick, you're a leader, and you didn't show anything of that. But Mick didn't ask to be a leader, and I feel like if the jury was to vote based off Eric's call, there should have been a lot more votes for Mick as well.
I think when we look at it as well, I don't think it's necessarily always the case where Russell was always going to win. I think that decision to take out Jason instead of Natalie was the crucial decision. And even the Shambo vote, where can you pull Shambo in and take her deeper and use it? Because you look at the people who voted for Natalie, I feel like Kelly's always going to vote for Natalie. Laura, Monica are probably always going to vote for Natalie. Jason, maybe he votes for Mick, maybe he votes for Natalie. We don't really know those relationships, but Brett is always voting for Natalie. Like, there are 4, I think, definite votes for her, regardless of who she's sitting against. I think those people like her against Jason, against Russell, against Mick. So I feel like just the composition of the jury was always going to be in her favor, and I think it's the failure of recognizing by Russell who he's sitting against with the people socially liking her. That was his big downfall.
Yeah, and you saw even when he's tried to show like who he is outside of the game, when I think it was Kelly asked him, 3 words that describe him, and he was like, well, he talked about, your honor and integrity, or something along those lines, about that's the most important things in his life with his family. And they just wouldn't have a bar of it. They wouldn't believe it. They couldn't put aside the fact that this is a game. And
I think a lot of that comes with, like, he's done all of these things during the game, and then he turns around in this final tribal council and says, literally, he says honor, integrity, and loyalty.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't believe that either.
If you got asked the question at tribal council, like, what's most important to you in real life, and what was he supposed to say? Like, lying to see, like, he was.
Let's start with family at least, surely. Go like.
But he was single. I don't think he had a family at the time. So, like, I feel like it's kind of disingenuous to say, as a single 33-year-old, like.
Yeah, but he's been lying the whole game. Why don't you just make up a family?
Oh, exactly. That's true. I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I just felt like no one in those names you listed off, Ryan, were ever probably going to give him a chance.
Yeah. I just think when you look at the jury, I think the argument for Russell, and it's so fascinating because then obviously he plays heroes and villains, and he goes into that game so confident on the back of, I've just won Samoa. And that's what eggs him on in that season. I think that's why it makes him like almost like an egomaniac in that season, where he's just so confident, so on tilt, where he's willing to risk and make moves that maybe you wouldn't necessarily make if you had time to reflect on a losing game like he just had, where he didn't have that time, didn't have that space, and in his mind he's the king of Samoa, he's the king of Survivor, and he's going to win 2 games in a row. So I think it's really interesting the way it plays out. Even seeing him at that at the reunion show and as the votes are cast, like, I don't know, I can see you nodding and watching that. Like, he knows that he's lost. He knows at that stage. He knows that he has lost when he's sitting there. Yeah,
I think, though, here's the thing, right? I wonder if is worth maybe telling Russell what the votes would have been before he goes out for heroes, villains, because I guess they don't care because they want him to play the exact same way. They want him to not really modify himself too much because they might lose some of that villainous magic. But maybe we could have seen a different Russell if he saw the result that he eventually knew and accepted that became the reality with Samoa.
Catherine, before we wrap up, is there any big things from Samoa that we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
I think Russell playing is really jury management's what I'm trying to get to. Sorry, that Russell really can't manage his jury. The way he sends people off, they have a bad taste in their mouth, and we can say bitter jury, but something makes them bitter. And let's face it, the next season he's playing against veterans who theoretically shouldn't be better, and yet they don't vote for him either.
Yeah, it's super interesting the way that it ends up playing out for him long term. I'll just open it up to anyone. Is there anyone else who has any major things they want to talk about Samoa? AK, there was something you wanted to talk about. I can't remember what it was about. Australian Survivor?
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So my conclusion of Samoa is that I thought the challenges were very weak, especially in the individual part of the game. I hated the baseball. I hated the archery. I hated all those, the bowling. I just thought very weak. I did notice, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was no family visits.
No family visits.
Yeah, no family visits, which I noticed. However, I did come across a few things that I would like if the Australian Survivor format is to stay the same. I would like for them to maybe try. I liked, I think it was episode 11 was or episode 12 was an entire recap of the first 28 days in the game or whatever it was. I just thought that's a good way of chewing up an episode without affecting the game in Australian Survivor, I'm talking. And the other one was I remember writing in my notes when both tribes went to tribal council and they voted no one off. I said, don't waste my time watching a whole episode not to vote anyone out. But then I thought, actually, in Australian Survivor, I thought maybe it would be pretty cool to get both tribes to tribal council somehow through some challenge that you're playing for a reward maybe or whatnot, and get grilled by Jonathan LaPaglia. And, some people will air laundry and you have others that are there to defend themselves or talk shit about other people in front of both tribes to get a little bit of inside information and end the episode like that. Because, again, I don't feel like that affects massively the game.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think it would have been super interesting to see that kind of like a retrospective at the merge, because we know Australian Survivor is so long. It's 26 episodes. And even if you talk about the episode lengths and you talk about needing 26 episodes, why not make one of them just a recap episode and add some secret scenes that we're not seeing anyway in Australian
Survivor.
Show AK finding his idol in that episode and, make that come watch this for this scene. That's something that's interesting.
It'd be really cool. I think about, obviously I talk about my end of the game because it's what I know thoroughly, but the conversations that were had with Peter, not just the Jared conversation with him on the beach, things like that you could show in the recap episode. You could show, sorry, I'm trying to think, the reason and decision making behind why Henry swaps over and things like that. Just I don't know. I just feel like you could get new footage. It would be new, and because Australian Survivor is so long and hard to keep up with for people that have lives outside of work, 9 to 5, it would be cool that you're like, all right, I'm fresh, I'm caught up.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, because I know that watching Australian Survivor, and this is a whole different podcast, but I have friends as well, and I guess we all have friends who try and watch the show, but they lose interest because they might miss an episode or 2 episodes, and they've missed a whole bunch of gameplay, and there really wasn't anything that could catch them up. Even like even 10 play should just have like a 2-minute, 3-minute video up every night. Just be like, this is what happened on Australian Survivor last night, and just have something quick so we could see and people could catch up without missing out on too much. But that's a whole different podcast that we
also feel like it's a chance to build a few characters that might not have time for the edit.
Yeah,
like you could have seen a bit more of Peter because he makes Final 3 through that retrospective. You could have seen a bit more of Jared and things like that. So yeah, and like there were times where medical was called. Like I'm talking, almost like six, 7 times medicals were called. I remember Annalise one night, she was like hunched over on her hands and knees on the beach, like medical. She didn't know she was getting these stabbing pains in her stomach. Peter got amber of fire in his eye, and medical had to come for that. Just there was so many things that could have like showed how strenuous and hard the conditions were out there in that recap ep.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I know Adam and I talked about this last time on our Survivor Tweaks podcast. I guess we'll do it again, Adam, at some stage this year, maybe April, when March before they go, and we'll do that. It was a really good podcast as well.
I'll be a part of that one. I'll be like, no double fake eliminations.
Oh, that's already on the list, AK. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah, AK's not invited to that podcast, but we'll decide at the time. So generally, thanks for AK for coming on and talking about Samoa. I know the reason that we decided to do Samoa this month because it was a season that got you into Survivor, and like I appreciate you coming and like sharing and your experiences about Survivor and Samoa and everything with us tonight.
Awesome. And I think Natalie is a very good winner. I don't know, I'm one of those people that looks at, I love the Russell game. I really do. It's what got me into Survivor. So yes, I'm a bit biased of Russell, but Natalie is still a good winner. And would you like to hear my epiphany?
Yeah, go.
This is today, happened an hour and a half ago. So I watched that final tribal council and how the votes went. And it took me back to when I was very young and I was a personal trainer, and there was like 8, 9, 10 personal trainers at our gym, and my coach, my like personal training manager, so we had to sell ourselves, and she would say, there are however many other people here with so much more experience, and they've got this to their belt, they've got this, they've got that, but people will train with you because they like you. That's the only reason people will train with you. Well, sorry, the majority of people. 95% of people will train with you because they like you. The other 5% are going to go up to the board of personal trainers and go, who's got the best qualifications that can train me? And I really feel like I know this is probably simple for a lot of people, but watching that jury, they liked Natalie. They wanted to vote for someone they liked. And I feel like there was that one person, the 5%, who could look at the board and go, who's got the best qualifications? And that was John. He voted for Russell. And Shambo, she liked Russell. That was the person she liked the most. So I really feel like if you look back, and I did, at all the seasons, people voted more so, like the majority of people voted for who they like over what their game was.
Can I ask you then, hypothetically, in 5 years' time, you play a second time, possibly, does that change the way even that you think about the game now and how you try and position yourself? If you were lucky enough, if you get past the first vote, AK.
Yeah. All right. So if, and that's a massive if I ever play again, I know I'm first boot, but no, I even look at our top 2 and everyone who got votes because they were liked more. And yes, I think this, we talk about biggest strategic games and physical threats and all this other stuff. I am so convinced now that it is your social game that wins you Survivor.
One last thing before I do let everyone go. Sorry, AK. You were lucky enough, you got to do a podcast with Russell, who I know was like an idol of yours. And, obviously doing a podcast with me is not too great, or Nick, matter. But Russell was this one that you genuinely super excited about. Can you talk about what that was? I guess that was like for you personally, and is there any like stories around that podcast? And Phoebe was on that, obviously.
Yeah, so Russell and Phoebe covered the Australian version. It got a bit scattered because there was I think it was the hurricane and the floodings that he was directly affected by. So anyway, after watching it, he reached out. He wanted me on their show. So yeah, I got to do a podcast with Russell, who was. It's funny how it works full circle for me like that. The guy that was the reason I liked the show, which was end up the reason I applied for the show and wanted to play a certain way I played, ended up being a fan of me and wanting me on their show to talk about my game. So it was a bit of a surreal experience. And like, look, I don't know too much about Russell outside of the game. I'm not one of those people that I love Survivor. I don't care. Not that I don't care for the contestants, but like I don't want to consume myself with that. I want to get on living my life and living my life with the people that I had before Survivor. So like I haven't reached out to anyone or whatnot. And for him to sort of welcome me in, and he was really courteous and spoke extremely highly and of me and my game is a pretty nice thing to be a part of.
Brilliant. AK, genuinely thank you for being a part of our Survivor Binge Club for Samoa. Adam, thank you so much for coming on and chatting about your favorite player, Shambo. We loved your tweet during the time you were eating dinner. Catherine, thank you for coming on and chatting about it. And, I feel like you are more positive on Samoa now as well, which is great.
Yeah, I think I've turned around on it.
Which is good. And Terry, Shambo lover as well. So hi, my boat. Thank you very much for coming on and talking about it and joining us for this couple episodes looking back at Samoa.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
What do we rate it? Where does it sit?
Where do we? Oh gosh, here we go. Adam.
Well, I'm going to be the most down on it. I still think it's a bottom tier season. It doesn't grab me the way that like other seasons do. I think like in retrospect, it's still very recruit heavy, and that I think has a lot of reasoning as to why there's a lot of maybe problems with it. There are some great characters, but it is the Russell show, and I think your love of Samoa depends on your love of Russell, and I've just never been that partial to him.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true about where we rate it. There are just so many damn seasons now. It's hard to rate these seasons in terms of, is this a top 10, bottom 10? Like there is almost, what are we now, 30 up to 36? So it's hard to actually rate them. I think it's somewhere in the middle for me. I have to probably rate them all properly and position them out. But yeah, it's a good, solid season. It's enjoyable binge watch. And it's pretty easy to binge watch as well because it is what it is. You can accept it for what it is, and you can remove some of the Russell bias. I think the Heroes and Villains, and I know Terry, you're doing this. You're watching Heroes and Villains right now. I think it is a great precursor to Heroes and Villains, and jumping in and seeing that season.
Absolutely. Like if you're going straight from Samoa to Heroes v Villains, like I did, it just flows on. Like it's the second series of the Russell show once again. But like at the end of the day, it's a really Samoa is a really good season in itself because there aren't many seasons that I'll end up binge watching in 2 nights, which I did with Samoa, which was not healthy. But there are very few Survivor seasons that you can do that with, or at least that I can do that with. So Samoa, while it's not low, it's not the highest on my list, not by a long shot, because there are those spots are reserved for a few. But yeah, no, it's definitely quite high up my list, but definitely not near the top there.
Catherine, you're the last one I haven't asked. Where do you put it? Like, is it out of your bottom couple into the middle?
Yeah, more towards the middle. I'm still a bit down on it purely because we didn't get to see everyone.
Yeah,
I think the edit, and that's nothing on the players, but I think the edit really just puts it towards the bottom. Middle to bottom for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would have been great to see more of Mick, more of Natalie, hear and see their story arcs, to get to see where they ended up. Like we saw Jasana, like we saw his story, but I feel like we missed Mick completely. We missed Natalie as well. So yeah, I don't know. it was a good rewatch, fun to do. Thank you everyone who's checked this out, and I'll put the podcast up probably over the weekend as well. So, here's my dog. Good timing. I think. I'll end it there. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Team
See you
Shambo.
later.